Breeda, welcome to Confident Women Ireland. Great to have you back on with us. First of all, you are Ireland's leading menopause expert here in Ireland and inspiring and encouraging women to live a more confident menopausal midlife years. Tell us, first of all, what inspired you to set up the Midlife Women's Rock Project?
Thank you, Roisin, and it's absolutely lovely to be here and to be talking to you over Zoom. I really enjoyed joining you on the Woman to Woman show last year in Kilkenny, or was that earlier this year?
Last year, yeah.
Last year, yes, yeah, exactly. So, yes, I set up the Midlife Women Rock project and the Midlife Women Rock cafes last year, and they followed on from a psychology degree that I had completed in 2018. And the thesis, my final year thesis that year, was on reviewing the research on midlife women and in particular menopause. And what I had discovered was that midlife, that whole area is one of the least researched areas in academia. And as a result of that, the whole area surrounding menopause has been very much, I suppose, the research on it is very much neglected to date. And what was out there up to about 4 or 5 years ago was predominantly negative. The literature was showing and talking about narratives like crisis, loss, taboo, deficiency disease. So it was very negative, very disparaging narratives and rhetoric around menopause. And when I was researching, this didn't really resonate with me because my background is that I've been working with women for years as a midwife and a community midwife and a public health nurse. And what I have seen on the ground is that, women face challenges all of the time. I've worked with women who've experienced bereavement, challenges around drug addiction, alcohol abuse, domestic violence. But the challenges come. But my own experience with women is they have this magnificent ability, once they're informed and supported, to overcome these challenges. So when I was looking at the literature, and the literature was so negative, that I started questioning it as there's something gone wrong here. How could women who are maybe competent and capable all of their lives suddenly arrive at the door of perimenopause, maybe in their mid to late 40s or early 50s, and not be able to manage menopause and the symptoms of menopause. So that's what actually kind of engendered in me a need to start up something that would actually support women, provide information and some education. So that led me to luckily getting a place with Social Entrepreneurs Ireland, and they were very instrumental in helping me to set up the first Midlife Women Rock Cafe here in Waterford City. And as you mentioned in your intro, the cafes are platforms that inform and empower women to positively and proactively manage menopausal transition. And they have been running in Waterford since last June, and we're gone on to Zoom now because of COVID. But there's a huge need for information out there, Roisin. And in the last 9 months, I've been interviewing women here in Ireland because I wanted to hear about how they're experiencing, how they're understanding, and how they're negotiating menopause. And the conclusions, let's say, from reviewing the research and from my master's, the conclusions are: number one, the silence is contributing to massive problems. The fact that we don't talk about it and the fact that it's still shrouded in secrecy, that's not helping women. So we need to open up. That's the first step. And even in the literature, it's there that if you think negatively, which a lot of women are fearful and in denial, your symptoms are actually going to be worse. And that's documented in the literature. So the first step is like what we're doing here, talking about it. And I know that you're brilliant in your Woman to Woman show, regularly talking about menopause and the need to open up the conversations.
Yes, and Breeda, I went to one of your first, I think it was your first menopausal midlife women rock cafes down in Waterford. And when I went down there, you were giving your talk. You had a PowerPoint up with all the menopausal, perimenopausal, and menopausal symptoms. I think you had 35 symptoms up. And I was going through them and I said, oh my God, I have 30 symptoms.
Yeah.
And I went, oh my God, the brain fog for me, which I learned at that talk, was normal.
Mm.
And that was one of the brain fog for me, the sleep, the deprivation of sleep, the insomnia, the weight gain, there were so many of the hot flushes. I can live with the hot flushes, but what I cannot live with is the brain fog and the tiredness.
Yes, yes, yeah, absolutely. I mean, Roisin, when I arrived myself at the door of perimenopause, I knew very, very little. And so many people said to me, Breed, you're a nurse, you're a midwife. All I knew is that you'd have flushes. That's it. That was about it, maybe. But there are 35 symptoms associated with perimenopause. And again, it's the terminology. Like, so many women are unaware of the terminology early menopause, perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause. Like, it is a transition, it is a process. We're not, it's not an event, let's say. So you're going to be going through this process for a few years, and it's the lack of knowledge. And as I say, it's the silence. I am after discovering that if women have information, if they have support, a network of other women, it's what we're doing here in Waterford, it's powerful, and it is showing to reduce symptoms dramatically. So it's what we need is more and more advocates out there trying to open up the conversation in order to help women transition through this time in life, let's say, consciously, and access all the positives, because there are quite a number of positives, Roisin, as I've spoken to you before about. As we are transitioning through menopause, they're there for us, but they've been shrouded. The silence hasn't allowed the conversations to take place to let us talk about the positives. Back in 1996, Professor Sharon McQuaid, she wrote about menopause, and one of her great lines is that menopause is the quintessential biopsychosocial experience. It is both a crisis and an opportunity. And what appears to have happened, let's say, over the last few decades, is the focus is constantly on the crisis, the loss, the deficiency disease, and there is very little focus on the other side, which is, in order to get balanced, we need now the light to be shone on the opportunities, because there are many, many opportunities for women as we are going through menopause. The early stages are very tough. I know myself, I was there. When you come to the door initially and you've no information, it is very hard. So it's being able to access that information and having some network that you can actually tap into and say, can you help me? Can you support me? It's massively life-changing. And the women that I have met in the cafes and with the course I ran there last year or earlier this year, the feedback is that information and the ability to talk or to be listened to and to be validated for what's going on has a massive impact on their lives.
Because Breeda, even through the media, I think only the last say 12 months, 6 months to 12 months, the menopause has only started to be actually spoken about within the media. And I mean talking between the English media and the Irish media. And it's only now that it's becoming an open conversation within the media and in the public arena. And as you said, it's still a very taboo subject, even amongst women, it's still taboo.
Yeah, it is. And Roisin, what's very interesting, what seems to be happening now, you see, from my own reviewing of the research and my own master's, which I'll be publishing hopefully in the next few months, menopause has been framed for decades to disempower women. Yes. We're actually completely disempowered when there's so much silence. And the old stories around shame and stigma, and we don't want to go there, that's not helping us. So we have to change and move away and have the courage to start speaking out, which a lot of women are doing now. The UK are definitely ahead of us here, but we're starting. I mean, there are more and more people starting off these conversations that we are having. And it's wonderful because it's, as, and you know where I'm coming from, is I want to shine the light on the positive aspects, because they are there, they're in the literature. It's just for too long, the other side of the coin, the crisis, the loss, the deficiency disease, that has been highlighted. So that it's time for a change. The old story has not served women, as you know, up to now. What is the point in going on, giving out, you know, that we don't want to go there? We need a new story, a story about women's empowerment and about accessing all these wonderful, as I call them, gifts as we are transitioning. Deep creativity, looking at opportunities for anything, to try anything in life, second chances, personal.
It's a new chapter, isn't it, Breeda?
Yeah, absolutely. Self-actualization. You know, there are massive opportunities for women, and it's just to get the right support and to publicize more about the positive side. And I feel that maybe if we start talking more about the positives, it might start knocking down the walls that are there surrounding the negative rhetoric that's very prevalent out there to date.
Because, Breeda, I know you probably have the same sort of conversations with women. When I'm talking to women about the menopause or anything like that, even with my own coaching practice, and we're talking about the menopause, women say, yeah, initially getting used to the hot flushes, and then once they get through to that, the sense of empowerment where they find their voice and they start to say no. And they have then this new realization of what you're talking about, and actualization, where they can start saying, I don't care what anybody thinks of me. We've got this new sort of self perception of ourselves now, whether it's through the midlife, whether we've reached an area of our life where we can say, I'm in the midlife years of my life. My children may have grown up, if we were lucky enough to have children. They've flown the nest. And it's a time for us women to actually say, we ourselves are more than just being a wife, a mother, a daughter, an aunt. We are human beings and individuals in our own right.
Yeah. Completely. That is completely true, Roisin. And if we look at the life expectancy now, I mean, you know, if we're alive today at 50, the prospects of being well and healthy, provided we look after ourselves, of course, are very high, that we'll still be alive in our late 80s, 90s. So we're looking at another 40 years. I was actually only last week on a Zoom call, because I'm actually going to write a book about this, following on from my master's. And the average age of it was women and men that were actually on the call was 72. I was nearly one of the younger members, I think, and I was just so inspired by all of the new career pathways people were going off, and new businesses they were starting, writing books as platforms, let's say, to open up something new in their life. But again, it's that growth mindset. You know, we have this choice when we reach midlife. There's stagnation or growth. It's there. Erik Erikson, psychologist and psychiatrist, talks about it. There's a choice women can make, and men: stagnate or grow. So having that lovely growth mindset, stay curious rather than becoming cynical. It's very, very important also to stay curious and open-minded. And it's getting the support, though, early on. That is huge issue. I know, even from myself, Roisin, I've spoken to you about this before, like when you don't know what's happening to you, it can be frightening. You feel lost, I think is another word I would use. You know, you feel lost. And certainly for a good 9 or 10 months, I remember the anger and the rage, which I had personally myself. That was a big one for me. And I not understanding where it was coming from until I actually read up and I had the access to read up and see, oh, this is actually part of menopause. Because I think what's happening to a lot of women is they're getting caught in and getting stuck in that crisis, because they've no understanding, which is not their fault. They've no understanding of what is happening. Because what I say to ladies is that you have to depersonalize it. It's the menopause, it's not you.
Yes.
It's the menopause, it's a process, it's going to pass, but it is not you. And far too many women recently whom I've met they're turning it in, they're blaming themselves, they're internalizing. Why can't I cope? You know, what's wrong with me? They may be trying different things and they're not working, and they're blaming themselves, which, you know, you don't need to do. It's about getting support. And I guess why it's complicated, Roisin, as I've mentioned before, is no two women are going to have the exact same experience.
No.
And that's why it's it's complex there, and women are getting lost. They're getting lost in not knowing or not understanding menopause, or not understanding themselves. There's two big issues there, I think, when we come. It's about menopause, but it's also about ourselves, because we are changing. There is a transformation happening as you're moving through menopause. It's not a case of, you know, I'm just going to be menopausal and move on, you know. But if you're curious, as I say to a lot of the women I work with, if you're curious and open-minded, and if you want to kind of bring the joy and more fulfillment back into your life, these are the women I love working with. Yeah, that's.
And Breeda, you say that there's, you say that there's changes going within us. That's hormones, because when you think we're going through, as children go through puberty, and then they go, so that is like empowering and changing their bodies so they can be fertile. Then they go through pregnancy. So that's a big change to our bodies. But we women in our midlife and going through the perimenopause and the menopause and postmenopause, this is a great way to celebrate the end of fertility. And for this to happen, the body creates all these different hormones going through us. And that's the change in our body. If the hormones are working in alignment with Mother Nature in the end of fertility.
Yes, I mean, there certainly is research out there on looking at menopause, let's say, as a rite of passage, just like puberty, a rite of passage. And women who do, in certain cultures, who do celebrate this rite of passage, they do appear to have less symptoms of menopause compared to, let's say, the traditional European or Western way of understanding menopause, which would be very medicalized, I guess, in many ways. And HRT is wonderful. You know, if it works for you, it's when it comes to rebalancing your hormones. And if you have an early menopause, let's say if you're under 45, there's a huge amount of research out there that we need estrogen in our body until we're 50. Our body needs it. After that, then there's more and more. I suppose a book recently came out on the importance of estrogen moving forward into our 80s or 90s, and the benefits to it. So again, if women want to try HRT and if it works for you, wonderful. But I think that's estrogen and progesterone, let's say, would be the HRT, Roisin. But I think women need to be aware also cortisol is huge, which is produced by our adrenal glands. And cortisol is the stress hormone. And that has a massive impact, especially on weight gain. Cortisol. Oxytocin is another one. You know, it's that lovely, cuddly one we have when we have babies. And that wanes, that drops as well. So we're not feeling as nurturing. And again, that's normal. It's normal because we've done our fertility, we've done our mothering. That's now behind us. So we don't need to be as hands-on, let's say, with older children. Okay, if a mother, let's say, had a baby later in life, I think that is different. But again, not to beat herself up if it's a thing that she's feeling that she's not she's just feels her body is changing. You know, it's just to understand that the oxytocin levels do drop as we move through menopause. And I mean, that's okay. That is okay. I mean, to tell women, Roisin, that it's okay to be feeling a certain way, I have found that the feedback is from a lot of women, again, it's all about the validation. It's
Yes.
such a relief, isn't it? It's the relief of being told, no, that's actually one of the symptoms of menopause. You're okay, that's fine, it's going to pass. You know,
And
that
that's what happened, Breeda, when I went down to your Midlife Women Rock Cafe, your first one that you had. I felt it's okay. These are menopausal symptoms. I'm not going crazy. An alien hasn't entered my body and overtaken me. These are menopausal symptoms, and it's okay. And it's okay to talk about it, you know, because as you said, I've had you a guest on many times on the Woman to Woman show. When I first started talking about it, you know, it wasn't really anything that anybody wanted to talk about, even within the community radio. It was like a new thing, that new topic and subject that I have brought up into the shows and the station. But that's really important, the validation, what you said, to validate this is a transition that I, as a woman, I am going through. It's hormones, it's the changing of my body, and it's a time in life for me.
yes, I mean, if you look at us women, I mean, we spend such a huge percentage of our lives looking after everybody else. And I think when we reach the door of perimenopause and menopause, we really need to start prioritizing ourselves. And it's not forever, but for a period of time, if one's symptoms are really impacting on your life, you really need to start to, you know, I call it radical self-care, start to really invest in yourself, look after yourself. But what appears to emerge in the literature there is that women, many women are very, very bad at looking after or putting themselves first, because I suppose we've been programmed for years to make sure that everybody else around us is looked after. But it's a time when radical self-care, my three secrets, the self-care, the space, the importance of giving yourself space. And this is particularly true in relationships, that you need space, because there is a transformation occurring. We are changing. And as a result of that, you do need probably more time alone. I found nature, or going out walking by the sea or into the parks and spending time on my own over the last 2 years. I've absolutely loved it, and I found it extremely relaxing. It definitely reduced my cortisol levels. And the third one, space, self-care, and God, what's my third that I usually say? Give yourself space, slow down, Roisin. Yeah, slow down. I mean, our lives and society's our lifestyles have become so busy. That slowing down is very important. Again, if your symptoms are particularly impacting on you. And I guess that's one of the things about COVID, isn't it?
Yes.
Lots of people are telling me that they have slowed down their lifestyles, and breastfeeding rates apparently have gone up, have improved a lot. I noticed from midwife friends of mine were telling me that the rates of breastfeeding have improved because mothers are able to relax more. So that's interesting.
Because that was, for me, finding that space to be alone, and that space and self-care. I think that is so important for women, to actually set time and space once a week, even if it's only once a week, or 15 minutes or half an hour of a day, aside, and just spend time on our own, whether, as you said, going to the beach, walking along the beach, walking in nature with countryside, reading a book, or just, my son built me a porch at the back. It's a porch, and to me, my son built it, so it has sentimental value, and he built it for me. But also, that is my healing space. That's where I go to spend time on my own, just to sit and just look at the garden, watch the birds, the butterflies, the bees, and the flowers. or where I go out to read or listen to the radio. Or like on Friday, I started Pilates, and it started Reformer Pilates. And there were women my age as well. And when we were doing the exercises, we were talking about this is what women need. This is women starting Pilates. For me, that was helping my body. It's helping give my body self-love, self-care, and self-gratitude. But it's so important, as you also said, women start in the midlife, women become far more creative within the midlife and menopausal years, don't we?
That's right. And Roisin, a great tip, for the low moods that are associated with the symptoms of menopause, one which somebody told me about a year ago. The quickest way to elevate a low mood is find your favorite music, turn it on inside in the bedroom, inside in the kitchen, inside in the bathroom, and dance around, listening to the song for about a minute or two. Yeah. And it's the quickest way to move. It's all about moving the energy in our body, where there's loads of energy, research now coming on the energy body, coming out. And it does make a difference. I remember when I started about a year ago or so, I felt such an idiot, dancing around the kitchen. Yeah. But after a few times, I said to him, I felt so good. And I had the dog, I was in the kitchen with me. So I used to dance around with the dog, and I said, wonderful. But it's a great tip. I give it to a lot of people because somebody passed it on to me. And it's about moving your body. And there's something that affects the brain chemicals. Yes. Once we start moving the body.
And for me, it's about the menopause for me, and we've discussed this many times before, Breeda. I found the menopause to me such an empowering time, a liberating time. Also, like yourself, I went back to education, got my degree in my perimenopause and the early stages of my menopause. And I started a whole new career and became an entrepreneur myself. But at the same time, all the symptoms are all going on, and the whole body's in chaos. But the sense of empowerment, but the sense of personal healing that goes through a body, not a woman's body, not just in the body, but also through the mindset, through the mind, body, and soul, it's empowering. All this is like, wow, it's a gift.
Healing, Roisin, as you mentioned there, that there's an awful lot in the research as well around healing for women as we're transitioning through, and access to healing. Issues sometimes can come up again that may have impacted us in maybe a negative way earlier on in our lives, and they can actually resurface as we're transitioning through. And again, it's about getting the support and being aware that this can happen, as you say. But there is massive healing to be got if we decide to go on the journey, let's say, and decide to invest in ourselves. And I mean, the opportunities for personal growth at this time in life for women are enormous. Should one decide to again, it's about investing in oneself. But what seems to be happening, I've noticed in some of the women I've worked with, or women that have contacted me, is many women are coming to their late 40s. They have been in work and worked all their lives, but they're burnt out.
Yes.
And what's happening is that they need to take some time out of work. And like 25% of women are known, the statistics there show us that 25% of women actually give up work or they leave work due to menopausal, is it mismanagement or just misunderstanding, I think, of it. And I mean, there's a big campaign in the UK at the moment to bring menopause education into GP training, to make it mandatory. Yes. They've got in the schools, the SPHE programs in the schools, they have it in the UK. So they're trying to lobby the College of GPs, because when women are in crisis, of course, the first port of call is the GP, and having the right information then to give women is so important. But healing,
Women's mental health, breeders. Sorry, women's mental health is so important within the midlife menopausal transition, isn't it?
It is. Roisin, yesterday was World Suicide Awareness Day, and what many people may be alarmed to hear is that for women and girls across the lifespan, the suicide rate is highest at 51 years of age.
Really?
Now they are, yeah, CSO figures, I've accessed them myself from Ireland. Between 2001 and 2018, the highest rate of suicide occurs at 51, and it's the same in the UK. And mental health rates for women and girls, again, across the lifespan, are highest between 45 and 55. There's a direct correlation between those mental health rates and menopause and how it's managed, how it's understood. So that's why that's the dark side, as I call. That is the reason why we need to open up the conversations. We need to change the old story, the shame and the stigma around it. That has to go, because those statistics, if we want to reduce the numbers of women with mental health issues, if we want to contribute to reducing them, we need to start talking more about this time in life.
Because too, Breeda, an awful lot of women too, when you talk about women's health and setting time aside each week for self-care, self-love, self-value, self-appreciation, it gives you time to think about your health checks and set up a health check strategy going forward, doesn't it?
Yes, yeah, very important. Let's say it. When I was 50, I went to the GP and I had a DEXA scan. I had a load of bloods done, vitamin D, B12, at the normal range, let's say full blood count. I also had a kind of cardiac bloods, I think, check done, and I got a blood sugar check done. I just decided, I'm 50, I want to get them done to have them as baselines moving forward. And I would recommend any woman to go ahead and get that done at, when you're coming up to 50, it's very important. And then if you are attending your GP, let's say for hormone replacement therapy, you could just ask, let's say if you're having, the blood's done, vitamin D, the B12s, your iron, and the full blood count, very important, just to have it as a baseline going forward.
And women's breasts also change, because some women might get cysts in their breast. There's nothing sinister about them. It's just a hormonal change within their breasts. And regular breast checks can help sort of get that situation right and getting the breast, getting the cysts out of the breast. And regular breast checks are so important.
Yes, exactly. And I think from 50, am I right in saying from 50 on, you're entitled to a mammogram every few years? Yeah, which is very, very important.
And Breeda, what would you say, if you can remember them off the top of your head, which would you say are the main sort of, if any woman is listening to us or watching us, I would say the main menopausal, perimenopausal and menopausal symptoms. And if we can go from symptoms in perimenopause to the menopause and to the postmenopause.
Right. Again, you see, we're all so individual, when it comes to, the biggies are the insomnia, when you can't sleep at night. That impacts everything. If you can't get night sleep, everything, your thought processes, your perceptions, your reactions, your work day, everything. So if you can at all find some way of getting someone to help you with your sleep. The magnesium has been proven to be great for many women. Having the baths before bedtime, reducing the amount of time on screens, very important. But sleep hygiene is, you really need to invest in sleep hygiene if you don't sleep, because it is a terrible one to have. The anxiety is another huge symptom for many women. I do feel a lot of the anxiety is associated with the silence, the fact that we've no knowledge, we're not prepared, we land and we're wondering what the heck is going on with us. and very little support. That they're all contributing to the anxiety. Now, I have met ladies who've had panic attacks.
Yes.
That's a different scenario. I do feel that if you are arriving and you are in a crisis with panic attacks, some women may need to take antidepressants. I would suggest short term, and then use lifestyle changes to help you with that in trying to reduce the anxiety levels. The other I suppose side of antidepressants are that in the UK in particular, there's been a lot of prescribing of antidepressants. This is doctors now saying this. They're wrongly prescribed for what they think is depression in midlife women, when in actual fact it's hormonal fluctuations. So hormonal fluctuations won't really respond to antidepressants. Now, if you have endogenous depression or clinical depression, of course, you need to be taking your antidepressants. But just, I suppose, to be aware for women, again, it's about knowledge being powerful, that the hormonal fluctuations may not be associated with depression as such,
Yes.
But again, it's about providing the information, having leaflets there for women, being able to access the knowledge. And this is why I suppose one of the reasons I'm doing it is midlife women deserve better than what's actually happening at the moment. We really do.
I totally agree with you there, Breeda. I totally agree. I think it's about time women in their midlife years were celebrated. The women in their midlife have a massive amount of wisdom, knowledge, and life experience. And what you're doing now and what other women are doing now in Ireland and in the UK, but specifically what you are doing with the Midlife Women's Rock Project and the cafes, is you're empowering women with knowledge and information and education. That is powerful. And that is what we need. And we need the media to actually promote this as well.
Yes. I mean, I'm hoping going forward, to tell, as I was mentioning to you before, the new story of menopause. I think there's a need for a new story, because the old story certainly has not served women's best interests, and it's been quite consequential for women's health. I was at the Women's Health Task Force earlier this year, and they chose there at that forum menopause as one of their top 3 areas to focus on over the next 18 months or so, because they feel for too long the taboo has not really served women well at all. And we can see in looking at the amount of women that are leaving work, 77% of women in 2018, 77% of women in the UK stated that they were misdiagnosed or not diagnosed being perimenopausal with their symptoms. And in the UK police force, they were the first large organisation to actually do some research into this. Because they found that a lot of their officers were leaving work in their mid to late 40s, and somebody enlightened wanted to find out what was going on, and a lot of them were going off on stress. They were stressed out, feeling very low, and it was discovered that they were perimenopausal. It was perimenopausal symptoms they were presenting with. And once they had got the correct supports, many of them were able to return to work, which is...
Breeda, I remember the first time I went to my doctor and he did a blood test, and he says, Roisin, you're right span in the middle of the menopause. I thought, he's gone crazy because I'm far too young for the menopause. I was only around 42, 43. I thought, no, he's got the blood check mixed up, and because I'm not menopausal. But there again, if I had the knowledge and the information, which like people like you, the Midlife Women Rock Project, and you, Breeda Birmingham, if it had been more openly discussed, I would have went, oh, that's what everything is. Because then I was with another consultant over my own health, because my whole health went haywire. And it was put down to the menopause was causing havoc with my body. And once I knew from going to your midlife women's rock project cafes, I went and I said to you at the time, a sigh of relief. I'm not going crazy. There's my body. I'm not going. I'm not going crazy. My body is just in that transitional stage, and I need to just, as you say, self-care and look after my body and enjoy the stage. And when you were talking earlier, do you think the narrative and the framing of the narrative of women in the midlife and even the word perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause needs to be changed?
You see, the framing, I think, the framing of it to date hasn't helped women at all. That's what I found, in researching and in interviewing the women over the last 6 months or so, let's say, here in Ireland. It's been framed, surrounding these words like loss, crisis. That's why women are so afraid. They don't want to go there. They're in denial. They just don't want, and there's stigma and shame surrounding the menopause. And I was, I love digging when I find them. I like researching. So I was trying to go back and find out, where did it start, all this negativity around this life phase. Because for me, I see that, in my own work life, let's say, when women meet challenges, it's tough, but women are wonderful at overcoming challenges. That's my life experience from working with women for many years. So menopause is another one of these challenges, I feel, and it needs to be overcome. And it will be overcome with more education, more information, more support. When women support other women,
Yes.
it's very, very powerful. Very, very
And
powerful.
two, it's about getting the stories out there, getting the message out there into the mainstream medias, and getting people talking about the perimenopause, the menopause, and postmenopause. So the perimenopause, we start off all these symptoms: hot flushes, weight gain, panic attacks, and maybe even lack of self-confidence, because all these symptoms can affect your confidence.
Yes.
Then you have the menopause. Tell us about the menopause stage.
Okay, so the perimenopause, that's really when all of the uglies, as I call them, they all appear in the perimenopause. And as you're transitioning through, then for me, it was, let's say, 2 years. I can honestly say I had quite a number of the perimenopausal symptoms. I had the weight gain, fluid retention, body odor, the anger, that anger, the flushes. They were my big ones. And then this kind of feeling of being lost or wondering what is it, what's happening or what's it all about. And like there's psychological and our psychological and emotional health has a massive impact on our mental health, Roisin. So having good psychological and emotional health will actually, directly affect our mental health. And in the research, as we're transitioning through menopause, what's important is the physical symptoms, the psychological, emotional symptoms, but there's also a lot of research around spirituality and a spiritual life and the benefits of tapping into spirituality in whatever form, you feel drawn to. That has been shown again in the research to help women as they transition through this period and move from where the confidence and the courage dips dramatically in the early stages, because lots of women tell me their confidence, self-esteem goes completely early on, and I could completely identify with that. But as we move through, it's amazing. It's kind of, we go down, but we start, it's like a kind of, it's about empowerment, and it's about coming into a kind of a more authentic version of who we are. I think that's what the journey is about. And it's not just, I'm in menopause, open the door, let me go through, and I'm going to go out the other side. That's not it. There is actually more to it than the physical, but the physical gets an awful lot of coverage.
Yes.
But women, as I say, are so much more than their hormones, Roisin. You know, we're
Yes.
with feelings, we have emotions. There's so much more to us, attitudes, opinions, and I do think, you know, it's you're coming into the prime of our lives in many ways. I think from 50 to 70 now, looking at life expectancy. And I follow the US, I follow the UK, and the women there are seeing the 50 to 70 as, you know, it's a new, very empowering period for women, and to look after our health, preventative practices, let's say, put them into place, getting ready then for the 70 plus into that stage in life.
And really, just before we finish off, maybe you could tell women when they're coming out of the menopause. So we've got the perimenopause where we're going into it, the body's transitioning and changing, and then we're in the menopause. So how will women know when they've finished perimenopause and they've started going into the menopause, and then postmenopause? How will you know if you're in postmenopause?
Right, okay, so postmenopause is the definition, the clinical definition is 1 year after you have had no periods for 12 consecutive months, right? Yeah. So it's 1 year after. So I'm actually 1 year I'm actually 1 year now post-menopause, because in the end of July 2018 was my last period as such. So 19, so I'm 1 year now post-menopause. And clinically, again, this is the clinical definition because it comes from the medical world. So clinically, once you're in post-menopause, then again, in the literature, they say all the symptoms are supposed to disappear, you know, but they don't. You know, I can't say all of them disappears, because I would sometimes get the hot flushes. They still come to me. I still get them occasionally, let's say, but the anger is gone, the body odor, a lot of the others are gone. I think the only one that probably is with me still are the flushes that come and go occasionally. So women, you see, I think we have this innate ability ourselves to know when we have moved in. And for some women it can take 2 years, it may take 3 years, it may take longer, depending, again, it's the emotional, psychological, this feeling of being lost is very prevalent. Women just don't know what or where they are. They're quite lost. And I do feel that, you know, get the support there, you know, talk to someone, get what you're feeling validated. And that makes a huge difference to women. And the women, let's say, that I work with, that's a very important part, the psychological, emotional part of menopause, and getting validation for that. And again, it's about understanding ourselves as well. Yeah.
And also, Breeda, for me personally, as a life and NLP coach, what helped me was actually changing my mindset and the language and terminology in my self-talk and in my internal dialogue and my attitude of approach to the menopause. And that's key, because we can get too stuck into the emotions and into our head, can't we, when we're going through the menopause?
Yes, yes. Professor Myra Hunter there, she in King's College in London, she's done a lot of research now on CBT. It's on, you know, again, changing the mindset or changing the way we think about things, because again, this is all emerging research only in the last, let's say, 5 to 10 years, about, you know, how you think about something is going to directly impact how you're going to experience it. And in the last 4 to 5 years, neuroscience, they've been examining the brains, because the technology now has got so good, and like the 55-year-old brain is now sharp, it's been proven to be as sharp as the 25-year-old brain. So this idea that we're declining, let's say, in our 50s is rubbish. You know, cognitively, we're not. Again, if you're told that, you know, that your best years are over, or you're told that your brain is declining, you're actually going to, you know, embody it. Yeah, you're going to embody
it. We are our thoughts. This is where it comes in. We are our thoughts. We are what we tell ourselves. We are what we believe. And I think too, it's about women changing perception of who they are in the world that they live in. Really helps with them in sort of their management and self-management of the menopause, and meeting people like yourself and other women who are inspiring women within the midlife. And Breeda, that's, since I went to your menopause, to your midlife women rock cafe, I just go, now I'm blonde, I'm having a blonde menopausal day. If everything goes wrong, I'm having a menopausal day, and that's fine. Just go with it, go with the flow, but don't be afraid to tell people I'm having a bad menopausal day.
Yes, yes.
And that's key and important. Just say, I'm having a menopausal day. Please ignore it. Anything I say or do, if I'm emotional or I seem odd, it's not me, it's the menopause. And just go with the flow.
Yes, yeah, and be kinder to ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, we can be very hard on ourselves. We can be really hard. And the other thing as well, I think, Roisin, like what you're doing, Confident Women, the fantastic work on Confident Women Ireland, women need to consider investing in themselves. You know, we invest in everybody else. We invest in our children. You know, we invest in our homes. But you know, it's a time for personal growth and development. And what you invest in personal growth is, you know, it's invaluable. The returns are invaluable. And spending time with a coach can change your perceptions and can change your outlook dramatically. Some of the women I've worked with, let's say to date, life-changing or game changers, you know, in looking at things differently. That's the way they describe it. And I'm sure the women you work with are similar, Roisin. But I mean, I so love Confident Women Ireland. I just absolutely love the title of your project, and I love the logo, Roisin. I remember that logo. It is fantastic. But I think there's a shift occurring. I feel as well, you know, from working with advocates in the UK, there's a shift. Women are speaking up, and they want more out of their middle years.
Yes.
And
definitely,
I think
Breeda.
that's a good thing.
Yeah, and Breeda, how can we're going to put the links below in the below, so you can check on and click onto them. But how can people get in touch with you if they want to find out more about who you are, what you do, and how you can help them during the transitional stage of perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause?
Okay, I'm on the website, Midlife Women Rock Project. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, so they can message me there. There's a 6-week course, Roisin, starting on the first week in October, if anybody's interested in joining, and that's going to be on Zoom. And I've also just started one-to-one, now that I'm finished my master's, one-to-one consults with women who are, as I say, if they're open-minded, curious, and they want to get more joy and fulfillment back into their lives. I look forward to working with women in the future like that.
Well, Breeda, all I can say to you is thank you so much for what you're doing through your work and your passion and your life purpose in the midlife years of your life, in empowering other women to actually live more confidently and enjoy their midlives and have a completely different perception of perimenopause, the menopause, postmenopause, and just start living life, and just the wonderful life experience that the menopause and midlife can bring to women, and the healing and the empowerment and the creativity that women experience during the midlife.
Yes, Margaret Mead, Roisin, I'm going to finish on this, a famous anthropologist. She has this lovely line for women that are transitioning through midlife, and she talks about the access to menopausal zest. As we get over those horrendous, let's say, symptoms at the beginning, when we get the support for them, we can access what she calls, you know, a vibrancy and an energy. And she says there's nobody more powerful in the world than a woman with menopausal zest. So
I like that one.
Yeah, on that note, yes.
Well, Breeda Birmingham, founder of Midlife Women's Rock and the Midlife Women's Cafes in Waterford, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me today on Confident Women Ireland, and just keep up the great work that you are doing empowering women in the midlife.
Thank you, Roisin. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Breeda.
Okay, take care. See you again.
Bye.